Welcome to SQL for Absolute Beginners course, lesson 10. So far we saw CRUD operations, CRUD operations on the database system. So we created schema, we created table, we created how to create data, that is inserted data. We also know now R operation, reading operation. We using select statement, we know how to control that using where clause. We can also combine multiple conditions and or all those combinations. Now sometimes we need to update the records, somebody's phone number change, somebody's name change, things like that. And sometimes we may need to completely delete that record or multiple records. So how do we do that? Now before we proceed with the actual commands, I just want to make sure we understand that update and delete commands can affect your one or multiple records in the same sentence, same execution. So please be careful before you execute that command. Double check what will happen to the table if you execute this particular command, and we'll see how to control that. But just to make sure that you measure twice, cut once scenario is highly applicable here, and if not, then it will be a drastic change on the table values. All right, so the command is pretty simple. We have to start with a keyword called update, just like select. If we start with update, then provide the table name, and then we'll say set. This is another keyword. Set has to be there, and then we'll provide column name 1 equals value 1, column name 2 equals value 2, and you separate out as many columns as you want with a comma, and you continue that until you want the last one. And of course you want to end the sentence and this command with a where clause. This is what I was referring to in the earlier slide, that where clause is actually optional, and it will execute, the command will get executed even if you don't apply that condition. But if you don't, then it will apply to the whole table, which in most cases you may not need it. So just be careful. That's what I meant. Now let's see how we will actually apply this in the real workbench scenario. So we'll go to say use addition. So we'll say which schema to use. We'll apply, we'll check what the data is. So we'll see, let's say select ID name from phone book, where name equals whatever name we want to check, or we can also just select star from, as you know. Then our command will be update phone book set, and whatever column we want to update that value to. So we'll say name equals, let's say we want to change it to Henry the King. Now my question to you is, if we execute this command, what will happen? Take a moment. Well, if you can see, we did not apply any where clause. So what will happen is, it will go to this table phone book. It will find the column name called name, and all the values in that column will get updated to Henry the King. Even if the name earlier was, let's say, Nikola Tesla, it will change it to Henry the King. Even if the name was Wilbur Wright, it will change to Henry the King. So as you can see, this could be the drastic effect which you may not want to happen, unless all the records in the table, and no matter whether there are 3 records or 300 or 300,000 records, this will do within seconds. This command will do that whole chain. So you may not want to do that. So how do we control that? Well, it's a simple way to identify, and that's why we saw that select statement, that we want to double check. And what we double check is, we'll apply the condition where ID equals 1. So now it will do update this column value to this value we supplied, but only for the record where it finds ID equals 1, and we know that that is only one record that this command will find. So only that record will get updated. Now we can also say any condition will be good enough as long as you can find it, and you can do say like update phone book set name equals Henry the King, where name equals Henry Ford. Now instead of this, you say name equals Nikola Tesla, then Nikola's name, currently that record will get replaced with the new name we supplied, which is Henry the King. So this is what it will happen. Now one quick note, if the table does not have a primary key defined, if you remember when we defined our table, and that's what I was saying, that we don't need that every now and then we do it, but it does allow you to create a table without a primary key. It was not a mandatory requirement. So sometimes it will hardly happen, but sometimes, let's say somebody missed to create a primary key for some testing, and you want to execute this command. MySQL is smart enough, they have built in kind of safety feature where it will get you an error, and it will say that the safety feature in workbench is not unchecked, meaning if you don't have a primary key defined, it will not execute this clause. So that's a good feature in MySQL. It also doesn't execute where without a where clause, I believe. So that also is another check, and that's a good thing. But just keep in mind that this can happen. So let's take a quick look at actual running the actual query. So here we are, use addition. Let's execute this, and we'll also see how the table structure is if you want to, but we don't need to. So I'll execute this. So now if I do select star from addition phone book, we should get 3 records which are there, and we know this id equals 1 is what we want to update. So here is our update command. So let's do this exit update phone book set name equals. So it will set name equals. See, so far it goes by is what we are telling it to do. We are telling update this table. Okay, what do we want to update with? Set name column to this value. It will say, okay, I will do it at your command, sir. It is like that. But if we say only for the ones where id equals 1, then say, okay, I will do that. I will find id column, I will find the value 1, then I will find the column value name and replace it with whatever you ask me to do. So if we execute this command, let's see what happens. So execute, it's executed successfully. Let's run our select statement again, and we will see the updated value. As you can see here, Henry the king, it becomes for id 1. The rest are all good. Now what if you want to change it back? Well, same way, you say set name to original whatever that was, or you can also change it to something else, and we execute that again. So executed successfully. Let's run select again, and that's there. So we got it back. So update can help you modify anything that you want, but please be careful. So how you apply. So where clause is mandatory and it has to be there, and make sure how it will work. By mistake, I mean it doesn't mean where clause is there, that means you are safe. Let's say instead of this equal to, if I put greater than, think about it. What will happen? Now it will find any id that is greater than 1, which is 2 and 3, and if we execute this, it will update these 2 records, which may not be the case that you are looking for. So even within where clause, you have to be careful on how you define that condition. That's what I meant, like think twice before you execute this command. How it will happen, which condition it will find, is this what you want, then actually execute it. Now you may not be doing this again that often, especially manually, unless you really know that you need to update all of these. Most of these things are done through programming, but even in the program somebody has to write this code, and the good thing is the program does it all the time whenever required, so that's good. A bad thing is you don't necessarily see these commands in front of you because the code is behind the scene. You might have just a front end. Think about you fill out a form somewhere online and you supply your address, and later on you move to different place. Now you have to change the address. How do you do that? You fill out another form. So behind the scene, the program is going to find your username, and then it goes backward and finds your id, and then updates all those city and address and state and all those values. So that's how these things are done in a program. But you should know that no matter whether you write a program or you execute query right into this graphical interface, this command has to be there in any ways. All right, so we already know how to update records. Let's go back and see what else we need to do. Basically we talked about deleting record. Now how do we delete that? Almost same concept, but it's rather simpler. What you need to do is, we don't need to specify anything as such as a value, because there is nothing to delete a particular value. If you want to do it, you use update command. In this case we are completely deleting the record. So the effect is almost on the same line. The command is simple: delete from the table name. In this case it will be delete from phone book. Now if we just execute that much, then you can see it will basically delete everything from the table phone book. If you want it that way, that's great, but in most cases you may not. So you have to specify again, same way, where id equals something. So to test this record, we'll do this. We'll insert a dummy record. We'll call it insert into. So this will be a good practice even to see how we can insert record. So we'll insert first a dummy record, insert into table name phone book, and then we'll say values, and we have to have all those three values, as if you remember, ID, name, and the phone number. Now phone number is a varchar, so I don't necessarily need to actually provide the number. I can also say to delete, and since it's in quotations, it is just some characters that it will get updated. So let's see how this is playing out in the actual world. So we'll go back to SQL workbench, and we already have use addition command, but just in case if you are starting, let's execute that. And we know those three records. Let's just make sure we are good. So we do have our three records, and now we'll insert a new record, and that is inserted. So obviously we have to check again. Let's re-execute, select again, and now we have 4 records, although I gave the ID equals 5 and I say dummy record, and as you can see under phone number, instead of a number, actually we have word called to delete, which is fine because it's a character field. Had this phone number field been defined as integer, then it won't allow this value, and it would throw an error that this data type is, which is character I'm trying to update to, does not match with the data that is expected here under phone number column, which is integer if we had defined it. But if you remember, this is a varchar field. Now if you don't remember, let's say, then all you can do is just say describe the table. Let's see what it is, and you can easily see here ID is integer, name is varchar, phone number is varchar. Also we know this is a primary key, so this is a quick way to know it. If you don't want to do that, you can also always go here, expand the schema, expand the phone table name, expand the columns, but it won't tell you what type it is. So that's why you have to do describe here. All right, so we inserted data. We do have 4 rows, but we have a dummy record there, so we need to delete it. Now if, as I told you, if we just say delete from phone book, don't execute this because it will basically delete your whole table. Now again, there is a safety feature, so it should be taken care of, but just to keep in mind that this can happen. Now we know what ID it is. We said ID equals 5. Remember we started with 5 here, so we know which record to be deleted. If I put ID equals 1, then our previous record will get deleted. So things like that. Let's execute that, and the command got executed successfully. Let's select again to make sure that data is no longer there, and there it is. So we are back to 1 2 3. So we added the record 5, we removed the record 5. So this is how we update and delete the records. As you can see, the commands are pretty simple, but they are again very powerful, destructive command in certain cases. So please be careful how you use it. That's all I wanted to confirm. In the next one, we are going to start with aggregate functions. So see you then.